All right, enough of that. We'll set some national politics aside, get back to it in just a moment, and welcome in our guest. He is Deputy Director of Americans for Prosperity for the state of Tennessee. I don't know that we've had Michael on the show in the past. I've met him at a number of events. We've gotten to know one another, and it's good to have him in studio with us to talk about the school choice plan as presented by the governor and the legislature of the state of Tennessee. Michael Lofti with Americans for Prosperity is in studio with us. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Matt.
How's it going?
It's good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing good. Everything going well with you?
Yeah, no complaints. Everything's
you're in the thick of it, right? In the thick of the General Assembly?
Yeah. So we are moving right along as far as getting Governor Lee's school choice program, down the road and through committees. There are several different versions of it right now. But we feel extremely confident that we're going to get to the end of the finish line and get a program through that everybody's happy with.
For those not familiar with AFP Tennessee, tell us a little about the organization and why this particular piece of legislation, the scholarship plan, was so important to your organization.
Americans for Prosperity Tennessee, we're a part of a much larger organization, which is, just Americans for Prosperity. We have 39 state chapters across the country. And AFP Tennessee fights for a lot of things that, are very important to conservative voters. For example, we're currently fighting to outlaw or do a constitutional amendment to ban statewide income taxes across the state. We, are a very active organization when it comes to making sure that there's transparency in government, that, our government is spending money well. We are fighting currently in major ways, especially as a national organization, to close the border down, build the wall, before there's any talk of further reform or spending. So that's sort of some of the things that we do. And then, obviously with school choice is very important to us because we have always believed that the money should follow the child. Mm-hmm. So wherever that child is going to school, that money should follow them because there's already, every student has a dollar amount that's already allocated to them. And wherever that student goes, that money should follow. Now, I'll give you an example. I live in Cheatham County. We are pregnant, expecting our first kid, little girl. And we are having serious discussions right now as a family as to whether or not we're actually going to stay in Cheatham County. We have a beautiful home. It's on the river. Mm-hmm. However, Cheatham County has some of the absolute worst schools in the state of Tennessee, like near the very bottom. And so it's a situation where, unfortunately, I have to pay twice. I'm going to have to pay twice. I've got, my tax dollars that already go to the Cheatham County schools that are failing. And then I'm obviously not going to send my kids there. So then I have to pay again on top of it. And that's just wrong because the public schools have no incentive, no need, no requirement to actually compete or be better when they know that they're always going to get the money regardless of whether or not you send your kid there. And so, we're operating from a philosophy that says, there's nothing more you could do across the country to change the face of public education than to put power back in the hands of parents and allow the parents to be the ultimate deciding factor on where their kids go to school and how their kids are educated. And, I meet with a lot of school board members and so on across the state who, folks who are wanting to run for school board and they're wanting to change education and lawmakers who want to change what's happening in classrooms. We hear all kinds of stuff. And to be clear, it's not just failing schools. You can have some of the best schools in the world, like Williamson County schools, and they have their own set of problems, culture problems, DEI type of stuff. And so it's not just a matter if it's one of the worst performing public schools when it comes to academic achievement. It can just be a culture thing as well. And I've told people, I said, if you really want to change the face of public education, what you do is you allow the parents to take that kid out of school for whatever reason they want to, educate them in an environment that works best for them and for that family, and you will create market forces that will really, truly, finally start to change the face of public education.
So tell us a few particulars as you understand it. Help those, I always say those from Aniana, but, people that are just coming to this conversation and maybe they don't have any knowledge about what the governor's proposal would do. I've tried to do my best to try to describe it, but I want Michael Lofti to describe it as you understand it. What are the basics of the proposal?
So the governor's plan is to create 20,000 available ESAs, education savings accounts, much like your health savings account works, where the money that is allocated for a child already will go into that account, and then the parent will decide how to use that money. They can use that money in a public school environment, not a public school. They can use that money in a private school environment, or a homeschooling environment. They can also use it for tutoring. They can use it for several other pre-approved expenses. And one thing that we've seen a lot of in other states is that, they've kind of written the check directly to the parent and said, deposit it in your account and spend it however you want to. But that's created some fraud, right? So what we wanted to make sure that we did was we put it into an account that the vendors actually have to be approved, so there can't be any fraud. There are no strings attached whatsoever with the governor's plan. No mandates on curriculum, no testing mandates, anything like that. Then you have two other versions of the plan. You've got the House version as well. The House version keeps that same sort of framework that the governor's using, but it adds on a lot of public school reforms as well, which I think is pretty great. Most of it is, at least, because it's a lot of reforms that we needed in public education.
Sure.
So there's been an argument that, from the opposition, that if you're going to take, quote, public money for private schools, which I don't think there's no such thing as public money, but that's another argument entirely. But if you're going to do that, then you should have to make the private schools behave the same way that the public schools do. And so what the House has done that's very interesting is they said, well, no, why don't we actually let public schools behave more like private schools? Which I think is, there's a lot to be said there. It gives them a lot more flexibility on testing. There's a lot of benefits to the teachers as far as their insurance is concerned. I believe currently that we take 26 standardized tests. And there's only, I want to say there's 12 federally mandated. So we added a bunch more on top of it. So it erases a lot of those testing requirements. It redoes the way that teachers are, have their assessments done and so on. So the House has a lot of good stuff in their bill. And then the Senate has their version as well. And the Senate version of the bill is one that, we have a couple concerns with. It does mandate a couple of extra tests on anybody that takes the ESA. I don't feel like the governor's administration or the House is going to accept that. And I know that we certainly don't accept that because we don't want any testing mandates whatsoever. It is only 3 tests that they're asking for over the life of the student. So all 12 years, they just want 3 additional tests to be done. But still, that's not something we're really willing to cede on.
So there's a lot to unpack, obviously, from that answer. A lot going on. The biggest, I'm not necessarily worried about concerns on the part of the political left, the union supporters who want to protect the monopoly that has become public schools for the purpose of protecting the unions. I understand that that's an argument they want to claim. The liberals want to claim that we're out here to destroy public schools and all that. It's nonsense. I think infusing more competitive factors within the public education system, in addition to giving parents maximum tools in their educational toolbox to help their children, that's a win for everybody. It does interest me, your response to some of these concerns on the part of more conservative groups that this will somehow make private schools into public schools. Yeah.
I got to be honest, it's one of the weirdest things that I've ever encountered, really, truly. There was some conspiratorial folks on air earlier, I believe, that were talking about things that are just purely made up. And there's this notion. I'll give you one of their arguments that with government funds comes government strings, and I think what's missed on people is that all of the existing homeschool programs, umbrella, independent, private schools, whatever they may be, already have to abide by government rules and government strings. Well before we ever had the discussion of ESAs, they have to apply. They have to be allowed to exist in the first place. They have to be in line with the category of school that they're in, that the Department of Education lays out. And so if there was ever an intent to exert more control over what's happening with public schools, or I'm sorry, with private schools or with homeschoolers, the government doesn't need ESAs to do that. This legislature could have done it yesterday. They can do it today, and they can do it tomorrow without ever giving a single penny of a taxpaying parent their money back to actually be emboldened to make those decisions for themselves of where and how their kids are educated.
So, all right. So I've got a break coming up, so I don't want to delve too deeply into this. So you don't. There's no concern on your part or on the part of AFP that the use of money will somehow impact or affect decision making within the private sector.
There is zero concern whatsoever, and I think anybody who is saying that, those types of things and using those types of arguments simply hasn't been a part of the conversation, and they're just out there fear-mongering because they've had every opportunity to be a part of the conversation, to come meet with the governor's administration, to go meet with their lawmakers, and nobody's even talking about this stuff. Like, nobody. So it's just completely made up out of thin air.
There's also another argument, Michael, that we should just fix public education without involving private education. That there are, and I don't know what these ways necessarily might be, but I just looked at on the super text line, said, why isn't the focus on fixing schools from the top down? Get rid of the toxic culture of CRT, DEI, gender mess, etc. Change the top one in charge and on down, including teachers, of that mindset. That's from John, regular listener in Lawrenceburg. How do you respond to
that? I think for one is that I can speak for AFP at least, is we don't believe in top-down solutions. We believe in bottom-up. We believe that the people who are most empowered to make these decisions of what can change school and the state of public and private education, the state is the parents. So that being first and foremost, because we would much rather get away from the bureaucracy of trying to fix a system that we've been trying to fix for decades, and it clearly hasn't worked.
I'm fascinated that I'm talking to conservatives that have historically claimed to be in favor of school choice or the ability for parents to have more involvement in where their kids can go to school without financial consideration, right? Or at least alleviating a certain aspect or a certain amount of the financial. This wouldn't repair all of that, but it would go a long way. It's roughly $7,000. I'm fascinated that now some of the same organizations are arguing, not you, but others obviously, are arguing that parents should not have that ability because the public education system is so corrupted that they're worried that it will impact the private institutions, which already, as you mentioned, abide by certain federal standards. Look, if we want to argue getting rid of the Department of Education on the federal level, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, totally.
I'm fine with Tennessee relying on far fewer national dollars, borrowed money, to fund our public education system. I'm fine with that, too. I don't think that those issues impact what we're trying to do here in the state of Tennessee.
No, they don't. And to your point about, some of these Republicans or conservative groups who've, all of a sudden had a change of heart about whether or not we should put parents in control. I've not seen a single one of their talking points that hasn't come directly from the teachers union. And the arguments that they make are so incredibly circular. And again, it's just a matter of once you actually get into the argument, it just delves so quickly down into conspiracy. Now all of a sudden school choice is a UN agenda. I'm hearing that now, which school choice was Milton Friedman is the grandfather of school choice. And now suddenly it's a UN agenda. And I think that the teachers union, if they've done one thing well, it's that they have gone into the homeschooling community and to some of these further fringy, conservative groups, and they've started planning these conspiracies in their minds. And, I think there's a big political element to it as well.
Well, look, in my mind, and to answer John's question from my perspective, this is going to infuse competition into the system, giving parents a better ability to make decisions for their own kids. And the public education system can either embrace that competition and work better to be a better system to eliminate some of those aspects of the current system that we don't like, or they fail. And that's the point, is that if you add or infuse competition right now, and I've long used the analogy that if I only have one place to buy bread, it versus 3 places to buy bread, do I think my bread's going to be better or worse?
Right.
It's going to be worse because there's no competition involved. So infusing competition and giving parents an opportunity to choose, I think, is going to lift all the boats up in the state of Tennessee, in my opinion.
And I'm confident about one thing, and that is that we can make probably some incremental improvements in the public school, arena, but without school choice and without infusing competition, we will never actually see real dynamic changes in the public school system until you introduce market forces. Because public schools, when they fail, they put out their hand and they just get more money. They have a perverse incentive to perform.
I'm getting screamed at by 4540. I'll respond to it. And I'll let you respond to it in just a moment. Lofty, 4540 is screaming at me. It does nothing to fix or address poor, broken schools, Matt. Well, I mean, I'm fine with that. 4540. How about this? How about status quo? I don't have any. I don't care. Y'all's crappy schools can go to hell. How about that? I mean, honestly. So, I mean, it's up to the people to fix the schools through their individual representatives who y'all voted on. So, I mean, don't talk to me. Talk to the representatives. I'm all for those fixes that you suggest. I'll tell you what, 4540, I'll give you an opportunity to list some objections that you might have, or rather some fixes that you might have that I can suggest to lawmakers that come on the show, because I'm happy to be your champion for those positions. All you have to do is tell me what those positions are. It's 23 after the hour on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All right, in a few more moments with Michael Lofti, who is with Americans for Prosperity. He's the deputy director of the Tennessee branch of Americans for Prosperity, talking about their support as an organization and his support of the plan presented by Governor Bill Lee and many other conservative lawmakers, or certainly at least Republican lawmakers in the state of Tennessee, and some of the opposition to the legislation. So it would give opportunity for parents. I'm just trying to reset it so people can understand it. It would give opportunity for parents to receive a scholarship of roughly $7,000 to supplement monies that they would put with that, because most private schools are more than $7,000 a year. To send their kids to a private school or a different educational opportunity. They already have an opportunity to move their kids around district to district. This would give them more flexibility to infuse more competition within the public education system. The arguments against this is that it's camel nose under the tent. I understand that. It's up to us to prevent those sorts of things. That camel nose already exists in terms of testing and whatnot and some basic parameters. There was another argument, and I did not hear this. I don't know. I can only rely on some of the super texters saying, I found it odd that an earlier guest today, and I think Gary Humble was on with Chris Hand. I did not hear any of the interview, so I'm not going to reflect on any of that. I'm sure Chris did a great job engaging in the interview, but said that when you pay your taxes, it's not your money anymore. Sandra writes, then he made the argument you would be using someone else's money to send your child to private school. Huh? ? Have you heard this argument?
Only out of Tennessee stands or Gary Humble. I mean,
no, see, Gary supported. I thought Gary supported school choice.
He did. Gary ran for state senate, and he was all about school choice. Had it on his campaign website, and then he lost that election to the majority leader, Jack Johnson, who happens to be pushing school choice very heavily. He's the Senate sponsor of it, and Senator Johnson is all on board trying to restore rights to parents and make sure that they can control their tax dollars and how their kids are educated. And now all of a sudden, it seems like sour grapes. I won't say that it is, but it seems like sour grapes that Tennessee stands and Humble are so against school choice now. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. Their arguments, as you just read, are once a taxpayer gives their money to the government, now the government owns it? I mean, I don't know. Some of their arguments have been that they're conspiratorial. I've yet to actually, and I've invited Gary to come and sit down and be a part of the conversation and help make sure that we have the absolute best bill possible. And he's never wanted to do it. Instead, he's been against it since day one before he ever even saw any language. And he actually just went and edited his campaign website, which is still up. He just changed his campaign website to where it now says that he's, now no longer says that he supports school choice. So it's weird to me because You ran for state senate on this issue, saying that you wanted to empower parents and give them choice. You lost that race, and now all of a sudden, now you're against it. But it's like, well, wait, why did you run on this in the first place? Like, did you not actually understand the issue, and you were just running on something?
I'm confused what changed, but I mean, I'll tell you what I'll do, Michael, in the spirit of the idea that he was on earlier today, and I've not heard the interview. But once again, I'm sure Chris did a great job with him. I'll just wait for Gary to answer that question when he's willing to come on the show. And I don't know what has changed necessarily. I don't know what particularly about. I mean, I would ask him, had the opportunity. Okay, you were in favor of school choice, a year ago.
Yeah.
If not 6 months ago. You're not in favor of it now. What about this legislation specifically makes you against it? What were you in favor of before?
Right.
And what has changed now? What were you in favor of before and what's different now? And help me understand the difference between the two things, because I'm all about, this is as bottom line as I can get. This is not, some people are describing this as an expansion of government schools or an expansion of government into our lives. If that's what this is, I promise you I am against it.
Oh, me too. 100%. 100%.
This is about, and look, if you want to talk about somebody that's a little bit nuts, for those of you out there who are coming at me on the Super Text line or whatever, I wouldn't have a problem with eliminating public education altogether. How about that?
I agree.
How about that?
Yeah.
Eliminate public education.
Abolish the Department of Education yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not even talking about federal. I'm talking about state.
Sure.
Leave it to the parents that decide to have kids. If you want to have kids, then you need to make certain financial decisions to educate those kids. Otherwise, they don't get educated. How about that? If you want to talk about a pure libertarian standpoint, but that's not where we live.
No,
that's not where we are.
It's not.
We have public education. Do we need to fix public education? Of course. One of the ways to fix public education is to infuse competition into the system to insist that public education get better or die.
It is the only way to fix public education. I'll give you an example. They say, fully fund public education. What the hell does that mean?
I don't know.
What does that mean to fully fund public education?
They just wanted you to dump more money.
Yeah, but I'll give you an example. In Hamilton County, so Hamilton County, Chattanooga area, for those of you who are from around here, but Chattanooga area, Hamilton County, they were originally left out of the ESA pilot program that passed in 2019 because the school superintendent there was the smartest guy in the world. He had all the answers. He said, just please leave me out of this. He talked to his state senator, please, 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 I can fix this. Just get me $25 million and I can fix it. I can fix this whole school system. What does he do? Senator Gardenhire gets Hamilton County pulled out. They got him a $25 million handout. They went from 5 failing public schools to 9 failing public schools in 3 years. So the guy left, got a promotion to go lead a DEI program at a college, and got a huge raise.
Well, it's like when Senator Heidi Campbell was on pimping the idea. I mean, she and Gary, I guess, are getting along a little bit, but she was pimping the idea that this is bad, that this is anti-public schools, that it would destroy public schools. And I was like, well, what is your solution? She said, we need more resources. And I said, well, how much? Tell me how much to guarantee me better grades. And there's never a number.
There's no number.
All right, look, it's a great debate. It's a debate that we will continue to have throughout the course of the debate that's going on in the General Assembly. Michael, thank you for coming on with us to offer your perspective from the Americans for Prosperity. Deputy Director Michael Lofti joining us for a few moments.